You never know. You never know. And it gives you a good feeling. You're leading, so your team sees that you're giving. So guess what they'll do on the weekends? They'll give back as well. Kind of a deep thought, but I'm definitely big on charity.
No, thanks. I mean, it does make sense that that's how you're aligned with your passions. Hello and welcome to the Fractional Executive Podcast. I am your host, Ryan Kauth. The Fractional Executive Podcast is for established founders and family enterprise owners whose businesses are in the $500,000 to $10 million annual revenue range and who are currently stuck on a plateau of no growth. My guest today is Troy Andrews. Troy is president of Glass Inception, a Dallas glazing company specializing in mirrors. He's the former CMO of a family practice clinic, member of the Dallas Business Journal Leadership Trust, and principal at Brand Inception and Dallas Frameless Glass. His community efforts include junior achievement, an emerging leader with the North Dallas Chamber of Commerce, and mentor at Southern Methodist University. Please welcome Troy to the show. Welcome, Troy.
Hi, Ron. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for joining us. Now, for our listeners and viewers, in order to help us grow your business and get it off that terrible no growth plateau, we need to get more great guests like Troy on the podcast. And again, to do that, please help us grow the show. And you can do that by sharing the podcast, like, follow, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star review. And again, this helps us grow the podcast, get great guests like Troy on the show, and then help you grow your business. And we want this to be interactive as well. So please drop comments, leave us feedback, reach out to us, and contact the show. So Troy, if you don't mind, let's jump right into it.
Sounds good.
Troy, you volunteer as a mentor at SMU, and the students you work with are the next wave of young professionals in the workforce. What do you talk to them about today that you wish you knew when you were early in your career?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the most important things I talk to is mentorship. Making sure that they have the best mentor and the right mentor to help them achieve their goals. The other thing I talk about is be very intentional about what they're going to college for. If you look at our world, it's changing so rapidly and so quickly to where if you focus on a couple of things, one, either become an engineer, because if you get an engineer, you'll always have a job. And then two, focus on your brand. And that could be your personal branding or it can be, professional branding, right? Because who you are is going to determine where you're going in the next year, 5 years, or 10 years.
I love it. I mean, that makes total sense when you're working on your personal brand and, when you're in college, go all in on something, right?
Absolutely.
Makes sense for founders and entrepreneurs as well. Troy, you've worked as a CMO and a creative director. What did you prioritize in your work in those roles that helped those organizations grow?
Yeah, absolutely. So, every business has different seasons that they're in, right? So it depends on what season that business was in. Whenever I was a financial analyst, whenever I was in the bank, I noticed that there was a lot of businesses that just didn't have operations down. Like they were great at sales, they were great at getting everything together, but they just didn't have that process, that system in order for them to grow. So when I became a CMO, one thing I wanted to do was make sure that all of their funneling, all of their systems was organized enough to where they will allow them to grow in their processes. And so that was one of the biggest things. And, in business, first is sales before operations. But once you get to year 2 of having cash flow come in, then there's operations before sales. So with our company at Brand Inception, what we really focused on was that company, the target audience, where they're in that operations part, not necessarily the sales part, because we know we can help them scale in that sense.
Troy, in your role now, you've got this finance background, you've got this marketing background, you have this operations background, right? Which is, I think, pretty rare, but great, right? As an entrepreneur and as a founder. In your role now, how did you learn how to go from, those functional roles in marketing, operations, or finance into more of a strategic visionary executive as a company president?
Yeah, I get that question a lot, and it's kind of funny because I don't install glass. I don't know if you know that or not. Like, I've never installed a piece of glass in my life. I actually don't know how to install glass, but from an operations standpoint, I know all the specs on glass. I know everything about glass. Like I know how tall it needs to be. I know all the rules and regulations, and then I have someone else that executes the job. And so I think with my marketing operations background has helped me to get into an industry that's basically untapped and to be a great, to lead them into like not the promised land, but to lead them into what they're looking for, because if you look at this industry in construction, there's phases. You have a high peak, and then when business gets slow, what do? They lay off everyone, right? So in Glass, of course, in our company, we really focus on culture because we realize that if we can focus on culture and you eliminate not only the culture part, but you eliminate the money part, then you eliminate that, then people are happy, and now they'll come to work and they come to work with smiles on their face. So it's not necessarily a job. Now they're doing it because it's their art. It's something that they love.
What a great answer, Troy. I mean, that alone, just what we were talking about here and how you get that question a lot is really why this podcast even started in the first place. So, again, if you are stuck on that no growth plateau, and in order for you to grow your business, help us out by helping us grow the podcast so we can have great guests on here like Troy. To do that, if you could share the podcast, subscribe, follow, like, and leave a 5-star review. Again, the reason for that is to help you grow your business. We get great guests on here like Troy that can help you, and we then grow the podcast as a result. Troy, I got a couple more questions for you. What have you, in your experience as a North Dallas Chamber emerging leader and a member of the Dallas Business Journal Leadership Trust, how has that elevated your executive leadership development for yourself?
Yeah. So, everything's about connections. Everything's about in life, it's about building those relationships, right? And I always like to think of it like this: you have a tree. Now you have that tree and then you have the roots of that tree. Most people they focus on the tree itself, right? But really what we should do is we should focus on the roots because the roots is the nutrients that provides that tree to grow throughout life, right? And so when I'm at networking events or Business Dallas Journal, I really focus on the roots of that tree, like who can help me and how can I serve them to get them to where they want to go. And so yeah, man, I think it's just and again, no matter what season you're in, you have to figure out what works for you. So like the chamber, I kind of felt like I've outgrown the chamber in a sense to where I needed a different networking group. However, if you're starting off, you definitely should have the chamber because that'll help you with that stepping stone. So absolutely, that's kind of my thought process on it.
Yeah, and I can see where that aligns with how you're telling young professionals to get mentorship, but at the same time now you have another level that you need to go be at. I mean, everyone does that, especially when you're moving up in leadership and now you as a company president are leading people. You also seem to have, found time to give back, right? Like as we were talking about in ways that I'm guessing that you're passionate about, right? Junior achievement, your mentoring. So tell me a little bit about why should CEOs and founders find time to volunteer?
Yeah. So I don't know if you know this, Ryan, but I grew up in a very small country town, like population 2,000 people. And, I grew up in, it was actually in deep East Texas. And, growing up, the values that you learn is you serve first. I mean, it's just part of how it is. I mean, I remember there was a farmer that I used to work with, and his name was Mr. Maley, right? And he used to be like, hey, you want to come help me out? Now, it was an hour for me to get to his house. And I would go and I would help him. We'll put the hay on the back of the truck, and then we'll go and feed feed the animals. But what I'm getting at is, when I moved to the big city, I really wanted to serve others and really figure out how to get really involved in the community, right? And so when you find that passion, like for me, I'm really big with junior achievement. I don't know if you got that part, but I like junior achievement because it allows you to do financial literacy with kids and really help them grow, right? And so I think that if we can, as a CEO, as a founder, or as a business owner, you have to make time to serve others because you never know who can help you out. You never know. You never know. And it gives you a good feeling. You're leading, so your team sees that you're giving. So guess what they'll do on the weekends? They'll give back as well. So, yeah, just kind of a deep thought, but I'm definitely big on charity, giving back.
No, thanks. I mean, it does make sense that that's how you're aligned with your passions. One more thing, if I could, before I give you some time to have our listeners and viewers know how to get a hold of you and then talk about some of the projects that you're working on. A lot of young professionals think that they don't have the ability to help other people. Right. And I'm sure, I know I felt that way. You probably felt that way, early on. And sometimes when you're mentoring a younger professional, you're walking them through the fact that nobody has the experiences that they do, and they shouldn't discount themselves about how they can help. What are some of your approaches to that, Troy?
So, everybody faced that challenge, right? And so I think one of the things that helped me was you need to put 10 pennies on one side of your pocket. And I did this multiple times when I was in banking. I had I led our team, and one of the things we did, we put 10 pennies on one side of our pocket because consciously, we don't help others. We kind of get away from that. We become, our societies kind of shift a little. So if you put 10 pennies in one pocket, and then throughout that day, every time you help someone, whether you're opening a door for a young lady, for an older lady or young lady or whoever, or a person, you move one penny over. And your objective is throughout that day to put those 10 pennies over to the other side. And what you'll realize at the end of the day, if you realize you only moved 5 pennies over, you didn't do enough. You didn't really help a lot of people, right? And that's from giving a referral. That's from reading, a referral, maybe a contractor come to your house and you want to refer over. Ask yourself, like, how can you help that person, right? Maybe it's opening the door. Maybe it's helping someone with groceries. Maybe it's buying someone a coffee. If you learn to give gratitude first, then from doing that, what you'll realize is later it comes natural, right? So now when you're going to do that networking event, now when you're going to do that charity event or that nonprofit, it comes unconsciously and you don't really feel it as much. So I don't know, man, that's something that really helped me, when I was in my early 20s. And I kid you not, I did that from 22 years old, because my mentor showed me that. 22 years old to 24 years old. And at that particular point, I had a company in 20 different countries, and I had a team of 5 to 6,000 people. And I only did that because my mentor helped me, and it changed my life. It shifted everything for me at that age. And so I think that if someone do that, it'll really help. Maybe a little bit longer answer, but
No, that's perfect. I'm glad I asked the question. Troy, again, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I want to give you some time now to allow our listeners and viewers to know how to get a hold of you and then talk about some of the projects that you're working on.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can reach me on LinkedIn. Definitely Troy Andrews. If you go to Google, just type in Troy Andrews space Dallas. I mean, I'll come up, and then just feel free to click on any link you want to connect with me. Yeah, I mean, I'm working on some really cool projects. I have a book launching soon. It's called Creating Your Brand Signature. That should launch by next month. If you go to troyandrews.com, you can find that. And I'm expanding the glass business in Argentina. Super excited about that. So that's exciting. So we'll be launching that within August. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it, man. If anybody need anything, if you're an entrepreneur, feel free to reach out. I love to help you, and just kind of go from there.
Troy, thanks so much. I really enjoyed having you on the podcast. You talked about some really interesting things, especially about your journey as you went from a young professional to the president of the company. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ryan. And you guys make sure to follow Ryan.
Thanks, Troy. For listeners and viewers out there, please share the podcast, like, subscribe, follow, leave us a 5-star review. The point of that is we get to grow the podcast. We get to have great guests on here like Troy, and you can grow your business. This is the Fractional Executive Podcast. And again, I'm your host, Ryan Kauth. You can get a hold of me at ryankauth.com. The Fractional Executive Podcast is produced by Influencer.tv. The great team of Mark Livingston, Brian Allen, Adam Marino, and Chris Dries.